Only in Kentucky can a single county claim the very first university-owned public radio station in American history, and maybe a legendary lost silver mine that's baffled treasure hunters for centuries. Hi, I'm Michael, and I'm learning a little bit more about Kentucky, one county at a time, all 120 of them. And today, I'm learning about Lee County. Situated deep within the heart of the eastern Kentucky coalfield, Lee County spans about 211 square miles of highly dissected, heavily forested terrain. The topography here is dramatic, featuring an elevation profile that ranges from 610 to over 1,300 feet above sea level. At its absolute core, Lee County could be defined by its hydrology. It's known historically and regionally as the Three Forks region. This is the exact geographical cradle where the north, middle, and south forks of the Kentucky River finally converge near the community of Beattyville. This convergence made the area of natural endpoint for early river navigation, creating a central, vital artery for moving raw materials out of the mountains and down into the Ohio River Valley. The very first recorded European exploration of the Three Forks area occurred in 1750 when Dr. Thomas Walker navigated the region, marveling at the vast, untapped mineral and timber resources. During the 1760s, long hunters like Daniel Boone's and the Skaggs brothers traversed all this highland area, and the early settlers who eventually put down roots here were a hardy, self-reliant demographic of hunters, trappers, and farmers. Land was incredibly cheap, valued at merely 5 cents an acre in the early days. Some historical records actually show one opportunistic owner who bought 8,000 acres of prime virgin timber for a grand total of $6, about $256 today. As the population steadily grew throughout the mid-19th century, the logistical nightmare of traveling over steep, muddy terrain to reach the courthouses of surrounding districts made a new localized municipality an absolute necessity. In January 1870, the Kentucky General Assembly officially established Lee County from the peripheral portions of Owsley, Estill, Wolfe, and Breathitt counties. But the etymology of the county's name is a striking, enduring political paradox. Most people, historians, agree that the county was named by the state legislature directly in honor of Confederate General Robert E. Lee. The paradox is that the population of the Three Forks area was staunchly pro-Union during the Civil War. And so these mountain families had fought bitterly against rebel forces just 5 years prior, but the post-war Kentucky General Assembly had become heavily dominated by Democrats and former Confederates who actively utilized their political power to memorialize the Confederacy in regions that had violently opposed it. Some locals still prefer to believe that the county was named by early settlers who migrated from Lee County, Virginia, but regardless of the true intent, the name was permanently affixed. The establishment of Lee County immediately triggered a fierce, highly localized war over the location of the county seat. The initial victor was the town of Proctor. It was incorporated in 1848 and named after a companion of Daniel Boone. Proctor sat high on the hills overlooking the river. It was a thriving hub of frontier industry, boasting hotels, boat building, and flour milling. But Proctor's dominance was exceptionally short-lived. A bitter political contest erupted between Proctor and the town of Beattyville, which was located directly across the river in the expansive flat bottomlands. A public election in November 1870 reportedly resulted in an exact dead tie between the two towns. The stalemate was ultimately broken by a backroom geographic persuasion. A Proctor advocate named Henry Smith was cornered and convinced that the flat bottoms of Beattyville were far better suited for the future expansion of a commercial city than the steep, restrictive hillsides of Proctor. So Smith changed his vote, granting the county seat to Beattyville by a razor-thin margin of exactly 1 vote. Following a barrage of legal appeals, the county records were unceremoniously hauled across the river and dumped into the back room of Nancy Hill's storehouse in Beattyville. As one local historian observed in 1895, Proctor sits silent on the hill beyond and weeps for the glory departed. The nomenclature of Lee County's other communities also reflects a fascinating blend of pioneer and immigrant heritage. You have the community of St. Helens, which was settled by German Catholic Bavarian farmers in the 1850s. And what's interesting is when they applied for a post office in 1902 under the name St. Helens, they actually preempted a larger community in Jefferson County from using that same name, forcing that other town to adopt the name Shively instead. You have Heidelberg, named by a German-American family after the famous city in their homeland. And then you have the community of Fixer. Supposedly a resident named George W. Booth submitted several suggested place names to postal authorities in Washington, only to have every single one of them rejected. And so, put up with it. Booth declared he was done suggesting names, and he told the authorities that, hey, if you don't like it, they could simply fixer themselves. And so the Postal Service took him literally and officially named the town Fixer. The economic history is linked to the extraction and transportation of its vast natural resources, primarily timber, coal, and oil. And before the railroads arrived, the forks of the Kentucky River provided the only reliable highway for bulk transport. Men engaged in the highly dangerous, grueling profession of timber rafting. They would lash massive logs together and ride them downstream through the rapids from Lee County all the way to the mills that were in Frankfort. To facilitate commercial navigation and manage the highly volatile river levels, the federal government constructed a massive series of locks and dams. Heidelberg became the site of Lock and Dam 14. Opened in 1917, it was an absolute marvel of early 20th century engineering. It was the farthest lock upstream and the last in the entire system to be built. It operated continuously for over 80 years until it was finally sealed in 1999, marking the definitive end of heavy commercial navigation on at least that stretch of the river. But the true industrial explosion was catalyzed by the arrival of the railroads in the 1890s. The Louisville and Nashville Railroad, L&N, also affectionately known as the Old Reliable, traversed the county, crossing the Middle Fork via massive wooden trestles. The train depots triggered an unprecedented economic boom in the area, shifting the local economy from barter-based subsistence agriculture to a cash-based wage labor system, and then rapidly also extracting coal from the mountains. Then came the oil. The discovery of the Big Sinking Pool in 1918 triggered a massive, frantic influx of capital, drilling rigs, and labor. The Big Sinking Pool became one of the most prolific and famous oil-producing fields in Kentucky's history, dotting the forested hillsides with wooden derricks. However, this period of highly unregulated extraction left profound environmental scars. Now, the deep geographic isolation of these mountains fostered a pretty enduring tradition of folklore and myth-making, and one of the most fiercely debated legends is the tale of John Swift's lost silver mine. According to local lore, an Englishman named Jonathan Swift discovered a massive, incredibly pure vein of silver in Appalachia in 1760. He supposedly minted counterfeit English coins and hid vast amounts of raw treasure in local caves and rock houses to protect it from indigenous attacks. Now, the legend states that before he could return to retrieve his wealth, Swift was cursed with blindness, leaving behind only a cryptic journal and a map. The directions simply stated the treasure was buried by the fork of a white oak and in the rock of a rock house. Since white oaks and rock houses literally define the entirety of Lee County's topography, the exact location remained pretty hard to pinpoint. Famous frontiersmen, including James Harrod, allegedly disappeared in the wilderness while searching for Swift's lost mine. To this day, the legend still draws hopeful treasure hunters to the shadows of the Appalachian Cliffs all over the area, not just Lee County, but Lee County was certainly a big suspect. The rugged, isolated terrain, though, of Lee County also harbored a reputation for danger that birthed modern urban legends. The deep backwoods are often referred to colloquially by locals as the bad country, places where the dense foliage blocks the moonlight and the very land just feels hostile. And among the most famous entities said to lurk in the darkness is the wood booger, a highly localized regional variation of Bigfoot, described as a massive, hairy, foul-smelling hominid that roams the deep woods and howls in the night. The wood booger has completely transcended superstition. Rather than people fearing the cryptid, the local population has seemed to embrace it as a point of civic pride. Lee County also holds a highly unique, often overlooked place in the history of American broadcasting. On October 17, 1940, a radio station with the call letters WBKY officially hit the airwaves directly from Beattyville. Utilizing a modest 100-watt transmitter, it made history as the very first university-owned, non-commercial educational radio station in the entire U.S. It was operated in conjunction with the University of Kentucky. The station remained in Beattyville, providing vital educational programming to the isolated mountain communities until 1945, when it was relocated to Lexington and eventually became WUKY. But this early successful broadcast experiment in Lee County helped lay the crucial groundwork for public media in America. And the station served as one of the initial advisors to NPR. Support your local NPR station, by the way. We also have the annual Woolly Worm Festival held in downtown Beattyville every October since 1988. The festival is deeply rooted in folklore regarding the banded woolly bear caterpillar. According to local legend, the caterpillar's physical appearance can predict the severity of the upcoming winter. So a woolly worm's body features exactly 13 segments, each corresponding to the specific week of a winter season. If a segment is light brown, that week will be mild. If it's black, it's going to be a freezing week. The central event of the festival is the highly anticipated Woolly Worm races, where attendees coax caterpillars up vertical strings, and the winning worm is officially declared the winter weather prognosticator for the entire state. They also lean heavily into their cryptid lore by hosting the annual Wood Booger 5K and the Bigfoot Bash in the town square, successfully, as I said, capitalizing on the region's mysterious bad country reputation, mostly to drive family-friendly tourism. But the modern reality of Lee County is also defined by immense economic and demographic struggles. Today, the population has dropped to roughly about 7,000 residents, and the median household income hovers around an incredibly low $24,000, and the county faces a staggering poverty rate of roughly 35%. To create jobs, the county welcomed the construction of the Lee Adjustment Center, a private medium security prison operated by Core Civic. It's had a highly tumultuous history, though. Originally housing inmates from Vermont, the facility experienced a massive riot in 2004 when Vermont prisoners were joined by Kentucky inmates in an uprising. After years of closing and reopening, the state of Kentucky signed new contracts to reactivate the vacant prison in 2018 to ease overcrowding elsewhere. So, that's Lee County. What'd I get wrong this time?